They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Thanks for joining us and welcome to another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorka.
And boy, oh boy, there is a lot to talk about. We've got immigration stuff, we've got movies, but we have to start, of course, the 2024 presidential race is, it's heating up. You know, Katie, we're on the precipice of Labor Day weekend. After Labor Day, it is full-blown election season. We still haven't heard much from Kamala Harris. She is hiding behind a teleprompter, but I think something really interesting happened, and it started last week. And it's funny because we may have even talked about it on our last episode, or I don't remember, but Kamala Harris definitely had the momentum from the news media. I believe they're oversampling Democrats to give polling results to try to prop her up and create this story that she's just found all of this success. And people didn't like her at all 2 months ago, but now all of a sudden she's, the queen of joy for the Democrat Party. I was talking about it just in my circle saying now is the time for RFK Jr. to come out and do something grand, a grand endorsement, a unification of independents with Republican voters to stand against this Democrat machine. And lo and behold, they did just that. Not only did RFK Jr. give a press conference about why he was dropping out of the race, or at least suspending his race in the swing states, but then he came out at what was the most exciting Trump rally, and well done to Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA for all of the pyrotechnics and all of the fireworks. And it was a very exciting and iconic moment when RFK Jr. comes to the stage and endorses President Trump. What did you think about this move? I think it's exactly what Trump's campaign needed at that moment after losing in the headline cycle, in that headline war for a few weeks at least.
Yeah, it was a great moment. And first of all, just kudos to Charlie Kirk. I did not know that that's who was behind the pyrotechnics. And I thought it was great. Both Sebastian and I commented on what a powerful image that was. And Sebastian even said, oh, that's interesting. Trump hasn't used fireworks at his rallies before. And it didn't go click in our brains.
We need more of that.
I know. I thought it was really powerful. But honestly, I think what really moved me was when they sort of embraced, and I just felt so kind of excited by that, because to me, it was a very powerful statement by President Trump that we actually are inclusive as a party. And I think the Democrats have become increasingly less so. And I think it is so important that we can bring in different types of people with different sets of beliefs, because conservatism really is not about everybody thinking in the same mindset. Conservatism is about principles like respect for freedom of belief. And if you look back, and I always feel we have to go back to this moment, right? When you go back to our founding, when you go back to that very first moment, when the Mayflower was about to land, they knew they were in the wrong place. And you had two very different types of people on that boat. You had very strong religious believers, and you had sort of very mercenary craftsmen who were there to do a job, right? But they knew that they would only survive if they could come together, if they could work together, if they could share space with their different sets of beliefs. They figured out a way to do that. They came up with a civic agreement. That was sort of the blueprint for what our founders eventually created in the Constitution. And that is what conservatives believe in. We do believe that you can have people with very differing sets of belief living together harmoniously. And I believe that's what President Trump will uphold. And I think that is what the Democrats are destroying. And it's really interesting because as you read comments of other Democrats about what's happening, they're pretty much saying the same thing, Yeah. And I think, even sort of Tulsi Gabbard is saying it. And I was particularly interested in this essay that Jonathan Turley wrote. I mean, he is a Democrat, right? And he even came out and said, the party changed. He said, meaning the Democrat Party, where once they defended free speech, Democrats have rallied behind censorship and blacklisting of those with opposing views. They have sought to block dozens of Republicans from ballots, including former President Trump. To make matters worse, they have done so in the supposed name of democracy.
Yeah. And when you listen to RFK give his press conference, which I did listen to it on Friday, he talked about how they'd spent $100 million to try to get him removed from the ballot. Now, how is that the party, the good stewards of democracy that they pretend to be? You let people get on the ballot and you beat them at the ballot box, right? We do it fair and square. That's how we should do it. We welcome in people with different ideas. And then when he came out, what I thought was interesting is that Jill Stein, who, I lovingly call like 1% Jill. I mean, she's not scaring anybody, but they spent a huge amount of money to try to get her off of the ballot in other states as well. Marianne Williamson, who, could be a little woo-hoo, a little out there. She's a little woo-woo, but I always think she's fun to watch when she gets on the debate stage because everything's about love and peace and unicorns. But with Marianne Williamson, she said that this time around, and it was true, she was actually running against Biden in the Democrat primary. I think we forgot about that. She said every piece of like news media that she got, it was tanked, basically. I mean, that was the other big story today is that Meta, after 4 years, Mark Zuckerberg comes out and says, oh, yeah, we were working with the Biden and Harris administration and we were suppressing messages and we were taking away 20 million different users' accounts. They suppressed 20 million different pieces of information about COVID, about the 2020 election. So look, say what you will about Marianne Williamson, but when she comes out and says that she was hidden by the news media, I believe her because they are in the tank for today's version of the Democrat Party. And if you're not in their inner circle, it doesn't matter if you've got a Democrat D by your name, they're going to push you out because it is a power hungry machine based on letting the party run the country and less about important ideological figures. And they don't like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They don't like Tulsi Gabbard because they would run things and they would be leaders and they wouldn't just fall in line with whatever the machine wants to crank out.
And if you have any doubts about what really drives them, all you have to do is look at that nasty letter that RFK Jr.'s family, his siblings, I think, wrote sort of denouncing him. I just thought that was one of the meanest things I had ever seen. We all of us deal with political differences in our families. You and I talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
But our love for our family comes first. And I thought it was so telling that their love for their family member does not come first. It's their politics, and it's a politics that has no room for dissent.
I was listening to Carrie Kennedy, Bobby's sister, on CNN, and basically saying, I'm not speaking to him. My dad and our Uncle Jack would be, they would despise Trump. And I actually don't believe that. I think today's Kennedy family would be Republicans. I believe Bill Clinton of old would be a Republican today because the party has shifted that much in such a short amount of time. I just think it's crazy. And one other note, just because we do have a Happy Women podcast, I want to give some props to Cheryl Hines, who is an actress, and she is the wife of RFK. She was out there standing by him as she ran. She took a lot of hits from her Hollywood friends and types. She was a working actress, Curb Your Enthusiasm, a lot of different sitcoms. She took a lot of hits and she stood by him through his run. And I thought what she put out as he suspended his campaign was actually really classy. It wasn't like a full-throated endorsement of Trump, but it was a thank you to all of the volunteers. It was a thank you to her husband. It was like an impassioned plea almost to have people realize what's going on within the Democrat Party. And I think she's in a situation where truly her support of President Trump does totally take away her career. And I think that's despicable. I think it's gross. She will feel the consequences of his decision. But you know what? Whether she likes President Trump or not, she's standing with her husband. She realizes the Democrat machine. And I just give her props because I think it's really hard. I hear from listeners all the time, we can't wear a Trump hat because we're afraid of our cars getting keyed or whatever it is. Think about that on the grandest scale when your life is really dependent on your politics. And that's what Hollywood has done. You're either in or you're out. And so I think it's important to also kind of just put a little underscore the spouses because they are impacted by all this stuff too.
No, I'm so glad you told me that. I really had not been following her story. And I just have to use that as an opportunity to beat up one more time Hollywood, because I think what's gone on in Hollywood has been really appalling.
It's gross.
And I have to tell you that, the more I've gotten into it, Sebastian and I have developed a TV show. So I've learned a lot more about Hollywood than I ever knew. I cannot tell you the number of secret conservatives who are in Hollywood. It's really astounding. And I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say shame on you that you don't have the guts to stand up for your principles. And, I've heard about people telling their stories. Oh, I'm going to get out now because it's, I just can't take it anymore. But, no, stand up for what you believe in, and yeah.
I think there are more conservatives in Hollywood than we know. And I just know living in Los Angeles that there was a Friends of Abe group where all of these actors secretly would meet. And, it was like the who's who of conservatives in the industry. But I think what you're saying is important. And it's what I tell people when they say, I'm afraid to wear that Trump hat. At this point, there should be no fear. President Trump took a bullet to his face, basically, to his head. And so you can probably have the courage to stand up and say that you're standing with him, or that you can have the courage to put that Trump t-shirt on. I think it's a really important message. And I think we're starting to see that slowly in Hollywood, where people are kind of coming out of the woodwork. And I told you my litmus test after the assassination attempt on President Trump, I went through Instagram to see who was posting that, who was posting those images and using their platform for it. And I started following Josh Duhamel. I started following these different actors that actually were brave enough to post that. And it seems silly. It shouldn't be that kind of thing where it's so divided. If you post a picture of President Trump with his fist in the air saying, fight, 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 that you could be somehow blacklisted. We just know it happens. So well done to those people who are starting to speak up a little bit.
And I think we all need to be doing it. I think one of the big reasons that the left has been able to get as far as they have and are as sort of cruel as they are is we've let them bully us.
Correct.
And we've let them run roughshod without standing up to it. And I think we really, all of us, not just in Hollywood, but, in all of our lives, we need to be standing up and not cowering, not being afraid to say what it is we believe in, because we do have truth and rightness on our side. And I think we are fundamentally respectful of other people. And that can mean standing up to the bullying.
That's right. I think you're right about that. Now, Tulsi Gabbard also offered her endorsement of President Trump. This one was funny for me. I mean, I love that they did it for a headline and officially did it. I kind of thought Tulsi was already in Trump's camp, especially since she was on the short list of vice presidential picks for him, at least for a little while. But she's been helping him with debate prep because she did such an excellent job debating Kamala Harris in 2020. If that debate happens, it'll be coming up on September the 10th. Tulsi Gabbard, I think, because her party has left her behind in the military aspect, I believe. I think that is probably her number one issue. And I think it was really important on the third anniversary of the terror attack at Abbey Gate that she came out after President Trump went to Arlington and paid tribute to those soldiers, which is what a real leader does, not laying on a beach in Rehoboth or hiding at the White House like Kamala Harris, and spoke about President Trump's love for peace and also for our military. And I think she's going to be another huge asset that will be able to travel around and campaign. She gets attention from people. And I think her endorsement's also pretty meaningful.
Volatility and uncertainty are everywhere we turn. Many Americans have grown increasingly tired of the reckless fiscal spending, mounting national debt, and the looming threat to the dollar. With never-ending political and global conflicts, Americans are looking for a way out of the fragile paper system and craving a trustworthy asset to help protect their savings. That's why they turn to gold, specifically a gold IRA from Augusta Precious Metals. If you have over $100,000 in a retirement account, it's time you learned about the potential benefits of a gold IRA from Augusta Precious Metals. Augusta Precious Metals is a world-class organization that prides itself on top-notch service. Ready to learn more? Get your free guide on gold IRAs today by calling 855-2 855-222-6994. Volatility is everywhere. Now is the time to take control of your retirement to secure a brighter financial future with Augusta Precious Metals. Call them at 855-222-6994 today. I do too. And I do want to say, I thought it was so moving what President Trump did yesterday. So, I have to tell you, I'm chair of the Fairfax County GOP. We did not know one thing about him coming to visit. He kept it very much on the down low. He didn't want to politicize it. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. We only found out really as he was at Arlington Cemetery, which is probably 7 miles down the road from me. And then he made a very low key visit to a local Vietnamese shopping center. So it happens that our Senate candidate, Hung Cao, is himself of Vietnamese origin. He was former military. He's now running for Senate. So he was there, which is great. But it was also really fascinating because last night, Protect the Vote, which is the RNC's election integrity project, they are doing a sort of countrywide tour, and they were in Virginia last night. So I got to go to an event with Michael Whatley, Pam Bondi, Matt Whitaker, former attorney general. And I was bummed because Laura Trump was supposed to be there and she was stuck sitting on the runway down in Florida because of storms. But it was just, here, it was a really exciting day with a lot of good Trump energy and a lot of things happening. So, to have on top of all that, Tulsi Gabbard with her endorsement was just very exciting. And I think it gave them a lot of momentum. And I think, let's give the Trump campaign credit as well, because I don't think it's just a question of when does somebody like Tulsi Gabbard decide that they're going to come out with an endorsement. I mean, I think it's something that's, probably coordinated.
Has to be.
Yeah, done for maximum impact. And I think it is a powerful statement. I think both Tulsi Gabbard and Robert Kennedy Jr. really speak to those people who do see themselves as sort of independent minded, not fully in one camp or the other. And that was one of the points that Jonathan Turley made. Many, many Americans do consider themselves independent. They really
and are
make
proud
a
of that, to hail their independence, actually. Yeah.
And so to see two leading, I would almost venture to say two of the biggest independents in the country, to see them not only side with Trump, but to see them embraced by the Trump campaign, I think sends a very powerful message. So it's all very exciting.
And I will say just one more little point about Afghanistan. I thought what was hugely important, but not widely covered, is what President Trump said on the anniversary of Abbey Gate. And that is when he wins, and he put it in that term, he said, I better have on day one in office the resignation of everybody involved with that withdrawal on my desk. And good for him. The fact that those people are still employed by the government, although from what I hear, it was really Joe Biden who went against the military advisors in a defiant manner and told them just to get out, that he was sick of it. He wanted him out. I guess already we'd have his resignation letter if President Trump's in office, however. So the ultimate resignation.
Well, and the other piece that came out about that yesterday, I don't know if you heard this, but at the time that it happened, Kamala Harris said she was the last person that President Biden spoke to before making the decision. So she could absolutely have, talked him out of it or whatever. Clearly she didn't.
No, and they owned it, by the way. They own their decision, and they don't even play up these anniversaries. Yes, they both put out statements, but it should be the president or someone who wants to be president who's putting wreaths at Arlington. It shouldn't have just been President Trump. She should have been there too, and definitely Joe Biden should have done something. The fact that the families haven't even heard from this administration, I think, is just... it's insulting. All right. Speaking of insulting, our crime issue, the problem with our open border, it is only getting worse. So we'll talk about how my state's actually incentivizing the problem to get worse. But you've had another instance in Virginia of an illegal immigrant who gets caught up in crime, does something to someone, gets out of jail, does something again. I mean, some of the most horrific things we're hearing about. Tell us what happened in your state.
Yeah. So we had a 36-year-old illegal immigrant who raped a woman. But here's what we find out. And, you know, if you Google illegal immigrant rape, you will see it is happening all over the country. There are multiple instances of it. But what stood out for me about this case was the fact that he was apprehended on multiple occasions. And not only was he apprehended and released, but the Fairfax County officials failed to honor the immigration detainers filed against this man. So
sanctuary, right? Don't have
absolutely. And Fairfax County is a sanctuary county. So here's the other reason I thought this story was worth mentioning. It's not just Fairfax, Virginia, for one thing, but I went and because I wanted to share the story with, sort of people in the Republican Party here in Fairfax County. And so I Googled it to look for try to find the story. And so this headline pops up: how a migrant accused of rape was freed and charged with rape again. So I thought, there's the story, right? Because that is the story. That's the same story as what happened in Virginia. Turns out that's actually a New York Times story. This is from 2 days ago, same time as the thing in Virginia. This is from 2 days ago. It's a New York Times story also about an illegal immigrant who raped somebody, a transgender person, raped them, was released. The ICE detainer was not respected. And then this person went and raped somebody else.
Wow.
And what I found just so striking about it, kind of along the same lines as the Jonathan Turley article that we were discussing, right? Where here you have a Democrat complaining about what the Democrats are doing, not happy about it. To me, I mean, this is one of the first times I'm seeing the New York Times actually criticize the sanctuary city policy. Now, they attribute this conclusion to New York City officials and Mayor Eric Adams. But the fact that they even include this line, it says, they say the sanctuary system enshrined in city law safeguarded the rights of a violent criminal at the expense of a vulnerable woman. Wow. I think our world is changing.
I hope so. I mean, it's encouraging that the New York Times is reporting on this. Just a few days ago, they had that opinion piece as well about Kamala Harris saying joy isn't a policy point, basically, referring to what they focused on during the convention. Hopefully, if you see that, I think that means there's some change, because that is our liberal paper of record, I suppose. But I think the problem is so prevalent. And I think if you look at the polls that are out there, it shows up as the top issue most times, even above the economy for many people. And that's because it's not because we're mean-spirited, but it's because there's an onslaught of people in this country. We don't know what they're here for. And in many cases, they're hurting American citizens, our children, women. They are preying on some of our most vulnerable, whether it's through attacks like this one, sexual attacks, or even drunk driving accidents. I mean, all sorts of things. And I thought it was interesting to note, Bill Maluzhin is a reporter for Fox News, and he was a local reporter in Los Angeles for years before that. And he filled out a FOIA request for CBP to try to get the nationalities of the people who were arrested at the border for ties to terrorism. And CBP, the Biden administration, of course, led CBP, shut it down. They will not share the nationalities. Now, not only we all understand crime in our communities, but you worked at the Department of Homeland Security. You worked with in which department were you? You were in communications, right?
No. So initially I was just in the Office of Policy at the Department of Homeland Security, and I was primarily working on counterterrorism, but you can touch on, I was also working human trafficking. I think what you're thinking of is at the very end, I served for a time as the press secretary for Customs and Border Protection.
For CBP.
Yes.
So using your experience, I mean, think about this. These are terrorists who have known ties to terrorist groups that warranted an arrest at the border. And somehow we are protecting their privacy instead of sharing the information with the American people. That's not okay. And I don't think that sits well with people. I think people realize they're tired of coddling the criminals and not protecting the victims. It happens in big cities and blue cities where we have these DAs that are in there, happening at the border now. And I really think there is a backlash that's coming. And I really do believe that that is going to be the top issue, even as bad as the economy is right now. And I think you're seeing it reflected in the New York Times, but I'm interested to know what you think about that story, that they're blocking that information.
Well, no, I think it's super interesting. And, you know, one of the things that stood out for me in the New York Times article was that they go back a little bit into the history of this man who raped somebody, was arrested, released, raped again. Here's his story. He first stepped foot in the U.S. on December 7th, 2022. Border Patrol agents found him. So he was intercepted. They turned him over to ICE. And then he was enrolled in a program that allowed him to stay in the country instead of being detained. And he made his way
the criminal again.
And then he made his way to New York. I mean, look, we are hearing incredible stories from eyewitnesses at the border, whether it's journalists, whether it's ranch owners. There are plenty of people. There are even whistleblowers from inside some of these agencies who are telling us we have had sort of numerous military age Chinese men coming over. We've had Iranians. We've had, you know, all kinds of people come over. And yes, so far, I think they're telling us, you know, every now and then we'll see X number of people who are on the terrorist watch list. But I think it's a really vast number. And for people who are inside this world, the counterterrorism world, right now, the general assessment is, we are just waiting for the first attack. I mean,
they're saying we're more vulnerable than even before 9/11.
100%. We've let so many people in and they're not tracking them. And I think it's very, very deeply concerning.
And for the children too. I mean, do you know how many kids have really just fallen off from the Biden administration? What was it? I think just recently they said 32,000, but then 80,000 in total kids that they've lost track of. I mean, it's heartbreaking. And that's why it's so infuriating when states like mine in California are just incentivizing the illegal immigration into our state. This program, I just had to tell you about it. I wrote it down and it never ceases to amaze me. When I think California has gone about as crazy as it can go, then they're like, hold my beer. And they give you one more thing that's crazier. So we have this program that's already in place. It's called the California, I think it's the California Dream Package or something, California Dream Initiative. And California Dream helps people try to get into home ownership because it's difficult. California real estate prices are rough. And instead of doing what's smart and reducing regulations and freeing up the builders and freeing up some of the market issues that we have in California, they just try to pick and choose almost like lottery awards for people. So anyone in California who is a first-time home buyer can apply for this program, and it will give you $150,000 for a down payment on a house. And that money does not need to be paid back until you sell your home, and then they'll take that money back. Now, that's taxpayer funded because we've got to give them the seed money, even though they say they're going to make the money back, right? So it's taxpayer funded. The program had 18,000 applicants last year, which was I think it was the first year it was in place. They only chose 1,700 to award this money to. Now, this assembly member from Fresno, Democrat, has decided that he wants to make it the California Dream for All package, in which he is going to award that money to illegal immigrants as well. Now, this is essentially a loan because you're going to be paying it back when your house is sold. And if you don't have a social security number, how in the world could you earn any money and qualify for any loan in this country? But once again, California defies logic. And they are trying to push through the California Dream for All, where now illegal immigrants can apply as first-time homeowners in California to get $150,000 taxpayer dollars. And here's the real test and its implication nationally. The question is whether or not Gavin Newsom will sign it. And there are, under normal circumstances, knowing Greasy Gavin, I would say, yes, he does sign this. But he also wants to run for president. So how is he going to justify this in a couple of years when he's going to be on that national stage? And so there's a lot of attention. We know that the state legislature is going to push this through because they have a supermajority if Democrats, but will Gavin Newsom sign it is going to be the really interesting piece of this.
I'm just shocked. Shocked.
We're almost done. Great.
I'm just shocked that they would for a second think that even Democrats would support this. I mean,
and I will say that I think 15 people have been against it, all of the Republicans in the Assembly, and I think 5 Democrats who have said this is even too far for them. But the bulk, over 50 Democrats, are going to sign up for this and vote it through.
Wow.
It's insane. Anyways, the California Dream for All Act. We'll keep you posted on that. I'm very curious to know about Gavin Newsom, what he will do next. But that's going to do it for us. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Happy Women podcast. Want to ask you a few favors if you can. Share Happy Women with your friends. Give us a 5-star review. We love seeing you there. And if you want to connect with us on YouTube and some of the other platforms that we're on, just go to SalemPodcastNetwork.com and you'll see Happy Women right there. You can connect wherever you get your podcast. And again, tell your friends we appreciate that. You can also get Katie's book, which you should already have it. But if you don't, Next Gen Marxism, available wherever you get your books. Also check out her website, katiegorka.org, and you can search her up on Facebook as well. Look for Catherine Gorka. You can find me there too, Facebook and Instagram at Jennifer Horn Radio, and Truth and X at Jennifer Horn. Thanks for joining us. It's another episode of the Happy Women podcast.